I recently moved out, and during a phone call, my mother-in-law cheerfully told me, "It must be tough without a home, but hang in there." I could only muster a disinterested hum in response. She added, "Enjoy life in your new place." And I replied politely yet firmly, "Thank you, and please, don't visit my house again, especially since a divorce is forthcoming." With that, she ended the call abruptly. Standing in the airport, I wasn't angry but surprisingly joyful. I made a small victory gesture with my fist and walked towards my new home with a bounce in my step. My name is Aspen, and my husband, Ben, was sent abroad for work right after our wedding. This situation forced us to live apart early in our marriage. Ben and I have a history that dates back 3 years before marriage, including a period of cohabitation which solidified our trust in each other. I wasn't worried about his fidelity. I just hoped he would stay healthy while away. Our life should have been serene, albeit a bit lonely. But everything changed when my mother-in-law decided to move into our house. A widow since Ben was young, she took it upon herself to watch over me, uninvited, to ensure I remained faithful. She justified her actions by her own past, where she was cheated on and abandoned by Ben's father. Her constant surveillance became unbearable. I reached out to Ben for support. He asked her to leave multiple times, but she resisted, claiming, "Ben trusts you too much, Aspen. A woman like you is bound to cheat." Her accusations were baseless and exhausting. She cooked only for herself, using ingredients I bought, leaving nothing for me. When I confronted her, she would retort, "I suppose you dined out with your boyfriend, since you're cheating," further fueling my frustration. Despite the challenging circumstances, I found a moment of triumph knowing I was finally moving on from the oppressive environment she created. Every time I returned home late from work, my mother-in-law stirred up trouble, accusing me of cheating because of my late hours. During a particularly busy period at work, her accusations intensified, causing me so much stress that I felt physically ill. I pleaded with her, "Please, I'm not cheating. I truly love Ben." Ben, busy with his commitments overseas, did his best from afar to convince his mother to back off, but her responses were disheartening. "So, you want me to leave that badly? You must be cheating," she concluded, leaving me with nothing but a heavy sigh. On a rare day off, I decided to meet up with my friend Haven. As I left, my mother-in-law seemed convinced of catching me in an act of infidelity. She followed me clumsily, hiding behind lampposts and the brick wall of our home, thinking she was unnoticed. I chose to ignore her antics. Haven and I met at a cafe, speaking in hushed tones to avoid my mother-in-law overhearing us. Suddenly, we saw a flash of light. It was her, taking pictures of us. Haven, looking puzzled, asked, "What's that about?" Haven, a strong and reliable friend since our student days, sports a pixie cut and has a street style that gives her an androgynous appearance. I joked that my mother-in-law might have mistaken her for a man, which made Haven burst into laughter. To tease my mother-in-law further, Haven jokingly held my hand every time the camera flashed, exaggerating her gestures for the camera, which only seemed to thrill my mother-in-law more as she kept snapping photos. This farcical scene actually helped me unwind. Haven and I continued our day with some light shopping, laughing at the ridiculous situation. As expected, my mother-in-law followed me all the way home, hiding and peeking just as before. I played along, darting quickly from spot to spot like in a playful game of red light, green light, while she scurried to hide each time. It was absurdly amusing, and I couldn't help but think how foolish it was for her to believe I hadn't noticed her following me. Once I got home and started to take off my shoes, my mother-in-law, unable to restrain herself, quickly barged in as if she hadn't been tailing me. Her entrance was so abrupt it almost seemed comical. Despite her intrusive and overbearing ways, dealing with her that day had turned into a game that somewhat eased the tension and absurdity of the whole situation. When I got home, my mother-in-law excitedly waved a disposable camera in front of me, proclaiming, "Aspen, I finally got proof of your infidelity. I'm going to send all these pictures to Ben, so be prepared." Her face fell when I replied nonchalantly, "Oh really? Good luck with that." She didn't appreciate my calm response and spent the rest of the day buzzing around me like an annoyed bee, insisting, "Are you okay with this? It's proof. Your face and his are both clear in the photos." I kept my cool, reassuring her that's fine. Although Haven's androgynous style had led to her being mistaken for a man, Ben had met Haven several times before our wedding. Even if my mother-in-law sent the photos as proof, Ben would likely recognize Haven simply as a friend. As I put up with my mother-in-law's childish antics, I suddenly had to leave for a business trip overseas. Unfortunately, I wouldn't see Ben, as he was in another country, but it was unavoidable. I informed my mother-in-law of my departure, but she twisted it in her mind into some kind of romantic escapade. While packing, she smirked and remarked, "It'll be a big problem if you come back pregnant from your romantic getaway. Ben hasn't seen you in a while, so it won't be easy to pretend that the baby is his." Her wild imagination rendered any response pointless. But I replied nonchalantly, "Yes, indeed, but it's a business trip, not a romantic getaway," and left. The business trip was intense and the days passed in a blur. Upon returning to the I decided to unwind with some duty-free sweets before heading home and sat down on a bench to take a break. Just then, my phone rang. It was Haven with some startling news. Aspen, welcome back. There's something I need to tell you. Your mom came to the company," she said. The company, run by Haven's family, isn't the sort that ordinary people typically visit, and the thought of my mother-in-law showing up there made my blood boil. Haven explained how she dealt with her and asked if she had been too harsh. I laughed and replied, "No, I think it was just right. Grateful for Haven's intervention." After chatting a bit more and sharing a laugh, I realized it was time to head home, feeling a bit lighter knowing Haven had my back. After another call from my mother-in-law, she started with a teasing remark, "Aspen, you should be back from your trip now. Did you enjoy your affair trip?" I sighed, correcting her it wasn't an affair trip. It was for work. And no, I didn't particularly enjoy it. Unfazed by my clarification, she gleefully announced, "Well, I've already sent Ben the evidence photos." I responded dryly with an "I see," which seemed to please her as she continued to speak. "Actually, I moved so your house is no longer there. I sold the old house, so you must be struggling without a place to go back to, but hang in there," she said, clearly enjoying the supposed chaos she'd created. I replied with a disinterested hue as she chuckled and added, "Enjoy your life in your new house." I thanked her, adding, "And please never come back to our house. After all, you're going to be divorced soon." As I stood in the airport after she hung up, I wasn't filled with anger, but rather joy. I did a little fist pump and started my journey home with a spring in my step. To my surprise, I was returning to the house she claimed to have sold. When I arrived, it seemed a lot of things were gone, likely taken by my mother-in-law, but I accepted it as a sort of severance from her interference. I immediately called a locksmith to change the front door locks to ensure she couldn't enter even if she tried to return. Then I lay down in the living room, reveling in the freedom I'd finally achieved. Inside the house, I made another fist pump and shouted, "I did it!" The next day, my phone rang again. It was my mother-in-law. "What's wrong?" I asked, sensing her panic. She was trembling as she explained, "Actually, I thought I sold the house, but it turns out I didn't. It seems I borrowed money without realizing it, and now debt collectors are coming. It's really scary." This sudden twist revealed her hasty actions and the messy situation she had inadvertently created. As she continued, it became clear she had stumbled into a financial mess that she had not anticipated, mistaking her dealings as a sale when in fact she had only accrued debt. I listened, realizing the extent of her recklessness and the chaos she had brought upon herself. It turned out that the business run by Haven's parents, while outwardly a real estate company, had a hidden aspect as a loan sharking operation. Haven informed me that her parents had made it clear the house could not be sold since it was in Ben's name, meaning my mother-in-law had no right to sell it by herself. After being rejected by several real estate agencies, in desperation, she approached Haven's parents' company. Misled by her desperation, they presented her with a promissory note masquerading as a sales agreement. Under the false impression she was selling the house, she signed it without reading the details. The document actually bound her to an onerous repayment of $2,000 daily. She managed to scrape together enough to fend off the debt collectors for a day, but was overwhelmed by the ongoing financial demand. Distraught, she came to me pleading, "Aspen, please help me." The debt collectors start banging on my door at dawn. It's terrifying. I can't sleep, and I'm broke. I used the borrowed money to buy a new house, so I have no savings left. Please, could you transfer $7,000 to my account every week until I've paid off this debt? I had to be realistic with her. Do you really think there will ever come a day when you can pay off the company's debt? Even if we combined my income with Ben's, it's impossible to send $7,000 every week. I'm sorry, but your only option is to work and earn the money yourself. Frustrated, she retorted, "What? As if there's a day job out there where I can earn $1,000 every day." Trying to lighten the mood, I half-jokingly suggested, "Well, why don't you talk to the company you borrowed from? Maybe they can recommend a good job." To my surprise, she took my comment seriously and responded, "Really? Then I'll go and see," before hanging up. I sighed to myself, realizing there was no stopping her now. Haven later told me that my mother-in-law had shown up at their company exclaiming, "I have no choice but to work because I have no money. Is there a simple and easy job where I can earn $1,000 a day?" Her plight was a mix of desperation and naivete, and it seemed she was embarking on a challenging new journey, trying to dig herself out of the hole she had inadvertently fallen into. Haven and her team managed to secure a job for my mother-in-law at a company known for its grueling conditions. Many employees there sleep in rundown shacks, used as dormitories, and work around the clock with intense physical labor. This includes even the elderly. The place is surrounded by a barbed wire fence and has a strict setup. Employees are blindfolded and transported to work in vans, ensuring they don't even know the location of their workplace. It sounds almost like a prison. Haven mentioned with a hint of unease that my mother-in-law could eventually be free from her debt, but only time would tell. Several weeks later, my husband Ben returned from his overseas assignment. When I explained everything to him, including his mother's situation, he seemed resigned, simply saying, "There's nothing we can do about my mom. All we can do is wish her a long life from afar." It became clear that Ben had always found his mother difficult, even since childhood. He had tried to be patient because she was his mother, but her relentless accusations of my infidelity had exhausted his tolerance. When I asked Ben if he had received the so-called evidence photos his mother sent, he casually pulled out a photo from his bag. "That's Haven, right? I have no idea why she would think this is proof of infidelity." He revealed that he'd had a huge argument with his mom over the phone, threatening to cut ties if she continued her baseless accusations against me, but it fell on deaf ears. "Yet," he admitted, "it's actually a good picture, so I brought it home." Indeed, my mother-in-law might have missed her calling as a photographer. The photo captured Haven and me from behind against a scenic backdrop, artistically shot as if from a photo album. Haven, ever the joker, was making a peace sign behind her back. It was quintessentially her. Ben and I laughed together, realizing how much we owed to Haven. "We should pay her a proper visit soon," I suggested, half joking. "Just make sure you don't sign any documents she might try to get you to sign." Ben chuckled. "I'll never sign any document that Haven gives me." Finally, free from the turmoil, Ben and I settled into our lives as a newlywed couple, enjoying the peace that had eluded us. We didn't know what became of my mother-in-law, still presumably laboring somewhere in the States. We could probably have found out through Haven, but neither of us had any desire to pursue that. Instead, we focused on our life together, and soon, I gave birth to our first child. We are relishing our blissful days, grateful for our peace and each other.